I'm mocking up the fuel tank. Right now I've just got it literally just tie wrapped onto the back of the original Raptor 700. You can see I've got the sending unit out there. But the reason I put it there was I could tie wrap it down enough for go-karting. Not really going much faster than, say, you could pedal a bicycle. So it's safe where it is. It's pretty secure. And the lines would reach where that was. But now it's time to go on to the next step. I don't want to leave the gas tank this high in the chassis. When it's full, it's one of the heavier items, and it does affect your handling. So I want to mount it low. So what I decided to do was to mount it under the seat. There is quite a bit of space there. In fact, I intentionally made the seating area a little high so I could fit some stuff under there. So let's take a look. You can see right here that I've got the radiator mounted in there. It's all connected. I was actually able to use most of the hoses as well. And what I'm doing right now is mocking up the fuel tank. You can see I got a piece of cardboard in there. And what I'm trying to do is to have a somewhat smooth bottom, but it rises up to the radiator to allow airflow into the radiator. And there'll be ducts down here, veins, so direct air up in there. It should be just fine once I get it finished. But the mock-up really does help to fit a tank in a very complicated space like this. I've taken the tank out of the Tiger 700 and have it on my bench now so you can get a better look at it. You can see it's actually somewhat of a complicated shape. Not only is it sort of a trapezoid shape on this way, but when you look at it this way, you'll also see that it's not really square either. It tapers in towards the back. So one of the things I wanted to make sure I could do here is I wanted to reuse the fuel pump and sender mechanism, the fuel level sender mechanism from the Raptor. So I've pulled it out of the tank. Here it is right here. That's the whole unit for fuel injection. Tells you also as a fuel pickup, has a sender for low fuel. So as I made my new tank, I want to make sure I could still use this and it would work properly and it would still suck up, most of the gas that's in there. We don't leave a lot of gas down at the bottom and it would fit. So as you see here, this is the way. I'm leaking a little gas here as I go, as you might see, but you can see it fits pretty well. It's going to fit in there just right. But of course I'm going to want that to be in the center, and that's what this is all about. So it's just simply use the same flange and just traced it. So that's how we're going to mock it up for the fabricator. I'm going to have someone else fabricate this tank for me. And then also I'm going to cut a hole here in the middle so the unit can fit down in there. And that's going to be about 89 millimeters or about 3.5 inches. That's pretty close to the same measurement there. So that should get it in the middle. It'll fit. It'll pick up most of the fuel. I think I'm in pretty good shape here. I just need to work out the details on the actual mounting surface itself. I'm doing the rest of the fitting on the tank. I've cut off the tabs, the mounting tabs, and drilled the mounting holes. Got them all smoothed out and nice. See it back here as well as I go around the tank. And this is where the sender unit is going to go. Sender unit and the pump. I have drilled and tapped these holes using the flange as a guideline. Looks like they're all in the right place. I'm going to run screws up from the back with a seal behind. Now I need to seal this whole sender unit to the tank, and the one that's in the Raptor just won't work here. It's just got a little ledge it fits into. That is just not going to work here. So I am making my own gaskets. Again, using the flange as my guide. As as you can see here. Just trace it out on a piece of material. And by the way, this is Fel-Pro part number 3157. It is a rubber fiber material that is made to handle gas. So you can see I've got it all lined out. I'm in the process of cutting it out. I'm using a punch to punch out the holes. I'm punching them out very tightly just to ensure that any fuel that does wick up through the threads of the bolts underneath, that hopefully it'll catch that. I'm attaching the sender unit with a fuel pump in it via some screws that I'm going to screw in from the inside. I've already tapped the holes in the tank itself, but I need a way to keep fuel from weeping up into the threads. So I took my little scrap piece from the gasket that I made, punched some big holes in it, as you can see here. This is what's left, and then took a smaller punch and punched in a smaller hole. So basically, I've got a washer gasket, and it ends up looking like this. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a washer on the end. And then I'll screw this in from the inside out and tighten it down, and that should give me a good seal. And on top of that, I've got some sealant I'm going to put in the threads too, just for belt and suspenders, trying to keep any weeping from coming up through the threads. Here's my gas tank. It's all ready to go in, so I thought I would show it to you one last time before installation, because this will all be hidden. You can see that I have put all my little screws in. If you remember, I made gaskets for the back side of this by punching, using a set of punches and this material to make some gaskets from behind. Turn those up tight and behind so they're good and sealed. I've also got some sealant in the threads to hopefully prevent any weeping. I've taken my sending unit out of the donor and placed it in. It was a great fit. By the way, I did, before I forget, I did tap threaded holes in for these screws that come in from the back, so it does hold tight before I even put on the sender. So again, here's the sender. We've got the quick disconnect here for the fuel injection. Now this is a high pressure line. The way it came from Yamaha is this line right here. Now this is a rubber cover on top of the actual line here, just a protection. Now you can see I have cut it here, cut it right here. And what I found is, if you are doing this, is soak this in boiling water just for maybe 10-15 seconds. And this is almost like a PEX material. It's semi-rigid. And if you do that, you can cut it with a razor and it pops right off. So that's an easy way to do that. Okay, so then I took the original fitting here, and the closest fuel injection hose size that fits this is a 1/4 inch fuel injection line. Now 1/4 inch isn't that common, but you can find it. I had to call a couple of auto parts stores to find it, but one of the local ones did have it. And it was a bit of a task getting it on here. It is a tight fit on the barb, the original barb. So I'm pretty confident that's not going to leak. And of course I put a clamp on top of that too. Over here we have the vent line, and I went with a 5/16, so that should be plenty for a tank this size. And I'll drape that up and over a high spot behind the cockpit to ensure that if it does roll over, that there won't be any problem with fuel coming out. And of course my outlet's over here. There it is. It is ready to go in. On the engine side of the fuel injection line, you've also got a quick disconnect. It's got a little lever here that you pull up. You pull up to get it into a disconnect mode, but it doesn't actually disconnect. It won't actually disconnect. You will need a fuel injection tool, quick disconnect tool, which is one of these. And basically what you do is just slip this inside, just like you do on a car fuel injection line, and that helps, that gets inside and actually does the release. And it is a size E. Here's one last look at the tank before I install it. One of the things I did while I was laying out my lines and my wires was I wanted to make sure this was easy to work on. So if I ever need to bring this tank back down again, it will be easy to work on. So one of the things I did was, even though this is on jack stands, as high as I can get it on a set of jack stands, I want to make sure the lines were long enough so the tank could sit flat on the floor, and I could get to the sender and all the connections in case I get a leak or an electrical problem. I've got it all together now. I've got gasoline in it. Double checked it to make sure that nothing was leaking, at least on the tank anyway. And also checked, there's a milliamp check you do on the sender, which I did, to make sure that was okay. And I cycled the fuel pump to ensure that that was working properly. And also, that was with the other end disconnected. And also just to clean out the line or anything that might be in that new fuel line. Could even be a little chunk of rubber from where I cut the end off. And just let it pump into an auxiliary tank over here to ensure it didn't get to the injector, any little dirt into the injector, because they're very sensitive to dirt. So there it is. It's all set to go. I've tipped it over on its side to make sure the gasket is sealing well around the sender and the fuel pump unit. Everything looks good, so in it goes. The tank is now installed. As you can see, it is tucked in here quite nicely. I've got about 3 gallons of capacity. Fits between the frame rails, and I'll show you here. You can see it fits really flush to the belly pan here. And they're nice and secure, so I should have nice flow. Triangle shape. All the lines run on the top. I've got very little bit of clearance in there, but everything works. This is my filler. It's actually a flush mount motorcycle filler. I've just got a little chunk of tubing on it right now, but I do have a 45-degree elbow rubber piece. But once I get the body sculpted and figure out where exactly it's going to go, then it'll extend all the way to the edge of the body, and you'll fill it from the side. It does come in a little bit on the seat here, as you can see. But once I'm all finished, I'm going to mold in a armrest right around that area anyway, and you won't see it. Still lots of room to sit. Coming around here, you can see the fuel lines come up. Going to route it up and around. The fuel lines being the feed, and the vent line comes up here and right into my fuel injector, right there. I've tested it, no leaks, engine runs fine. And then the vent line comes around the other side. It loops around to the top. I've got it swung around there so it's got a nice routing and it's out of the way so I can work on other parts of the bike. And comes down here and exits at the just where the swing arm is. So that's ready to go. Just need to cut that off. So why did I go to all that trouble to move the tank down below the seat? Well, the real answer is center of gravity. The location I had up here was really always just temporary. This is the tank that originally came on the Raptor 700. I got it mounted up on top here, and it's about the height that was on the donor. But once you get a tank full, it's, it can be 20, 25 pounds, even with 3 pounds of fuel or so. 3 gallons or so of fuel. And sitting up that high It does affect your handling. I think as you take a look around the car, everything is below the seat of my pants. I've taken the shocks, leaned those down, and when I finish, they're going to be even a little bit lower. So very low center of gravity. Well, the pedals and the steering wheel got to be where they got to be. I've got my tank down here. My radiator is right there, so that's probably brought way down. The mass of the engine is really kind of below this point. There isn't that much weight up ahead on the head, and of course there's nothing you can do about that. The chassis is pretty much down low, and then the swing arm on this is way low as well as the shock. So that means that the center of gravity is well below the seat of my pants. In fact, you could say the most unstable thing about this whole car is the guy driving it.